When you think of an accountancy practice, I worked for one of those. Over the years, I sort of found that if you went to university, you came out with an accounting degree, and you didn't really know much about accountancy. He's my best mate for my sins. Accountants have a good way of saying, I don't do that.
When you were looking to set up the Uncommon practice, you wanted to be able to offer support to their decision making, forward looking. Is that the sort of thing you mean?
And sometimes they think they're getting it. They do think they're getting it because they get these figures and it tells them what the profit is. It doesn't really break it down and tell the story. It doesn't tell the story.
Hello and welcome to Uncommon Sense. Our guest today is Marlon Armstrong, who is the director and founder of the Uncommon Accountants, which is the accounting division of the Uncommon practice. Marlon's also a Liverpool season ticket holder, although I promise not to ask you about that today. A year ago you might have been happier to talk about that.
Not at the time of recording. I'm not very happy, but yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
So instead we'll talk about why you set up the Uncommon Accountants, your work with e-commerce businesses, and then finally your uncommon sense for business leaders and business owners.
Okay.
So thanks for coming along.
Pleasure.
The first thing I'd like to talk to you about really is just to understand a bit about your career to date and how you ended up at the Uncommon Accountants.
Well, I've been an accountant for about 27 years, something like that. Worked in a traditional accountancy practice, as you know, the same one, man and boy, with traditional clients, the usual. I suppose most when you think of an accountancy practice, I worked for one of those.
Okay. And that was, so you were there for 27 years, which is a long time.
I was there for 24 years.
24
so
years.
It's like three.
And you went straight there from
college.
From college.
Yeah, as a trainee.
And that's interesting. I was speaking to Heather last time, and she was saying that is something that she's seeing. She did that herself, went straight from college. Is that something that you would recommend to people do themselves?
You mean straight from college to...
straight from college.
Or staying at the same firm for
years.
Well,
yeah. No, I meant more, I suppose, going straight into... It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's a way that we've got some people at the Uncommon practice who joined us straight from school, and I'm wondering if that's something that you...
Yeah, well, there's different ways that you can do it nowadays. In my day, it seemed to be more structured, seemed to be like you had to go sort of one way. But there's lots of different ways you can do it now. And over the years, I sort of found that if you went to university, you came out with an accounting degree, and you didn't really know much about accountancy, about the day-to-day runnings of in an accountancy practice, running things up to a trial balance, preparing a set of accounts, because it's almost like macro state. So the school leavers that came in and got trained up on the job as they were training seemed to be more useful at the start anyway, for the first 3 or 4 years. So yeah, that was interesting, and I've seen that change over years, and it's just been interesting to see how things have changed.
So you left the firm of 23 years and then a few...
24, John.
24 years. See, that's why I'm not an accountant. You left your firm 24 years. You've been there for 24 years, let's get it right. And then you decided that you were going to set up your own thing and set up the Uncommon Accountants, which is part of the Uncommon practice. Yeah. Would be really interested to understand what your thinking was there, why you decided to do it.
Yeah, I suppose so. Steve Harvey, who built up a solicitor's corporate practice in Chester and Liverpool, he's my best mate for my sins. His banter's awful, but I'd say for about the last 10 years, he's been talking about, and we've been talking about, putting professional services together in one business, thinking about the way the market's going and what clients want. It should always be about what clients want. You don't want to walk down a high street and have to, especially if you don't know much about professional services, but you're in business, you're a good entrepreneur, you walk down the street, you've got to go into an accountant's practice, you've got to go into a legal firm, you've got to go into all these different places. The advice is probably going to overlap. And so we thought, let's put it together, let's make it easier for a client, and we can just add more value then to what we do.
So when you say what clients want, what is it in your experience? Okay, so you're saying that you've got a one-stop solution, if you like.
It's almost like seamless advice across different boundaries. Accountants have a good way of saying, I don't do that.
Right.
So, for example, forensic accountancy, people think that I can't be a forensic accountant. They do something different. They stand up in court and they do this and that and the other. When that forensic accountant started off as just a qualified accountant, because it's the skills that they've got that cross over to help them do that sort of work. So due diligence, for example, you don't have to go to a corporate finance house for someone to be able to do due diligence. We can do it. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's what people want. People want somebody to be able to sit around the table of the same firm and get seamless advice that doesn't overlap. There's no arguments, if you like.
And we've spoken before about how in the accounting world, in your view, other accounting firms, or just the way it's always been done, is very much backwards facing. I know we've spoken about this before.
Absolutely.
With businesses. So it's, here's your compliance work, here's your tax returns, and here's your accounts. And when you were looking to set up the Uncommon Practice, when you're saying what clients want, is that what you were saying in terms of you wanted to be able to offer support to their decision making, forward looking? Is that the sort of thing you mean?
Absolutely, support towards their decision making. How do you do that? You break things down to the bare minimum and say, how good is your data? I want somebody. I want to help a client get perfect data to help them make good management decisions, because if they haven't, they can't. And like you said, if we're backwards facing, we're just giving them some information that's a year and a half old, and people just say, what good's that to me? What's my tax bill? So that's all that's good for. We don't want that. We want good monthly management information. So we want to try and digitize your processes. We want to say, right, how do we get that information? How do we collate it? How do we put it together? How do you see it? And then do you understand it at the end of the month in order for you to be able to make management decisions?
So you see your role almost as an accountant sort of elevated beyond the role of just producing the accounts, if you like, and taking more of a strategic role. Is that what you would say? Yeah,
absolutely. And I think we want clients to understand that. Some clients still want to just bring a load of receipts in at the end of the year and do that. And we probably don't really want to work with people like that. We want to work with people who want to know more about their business so they can grow it, so they can scale it, and we can help them do that. We can't help them, get more customers. We don't necessarily know about the intricacies of what they do, painting and decorating, cutting granite worktops, whatever it may be. But we want to be able to wholeheartedly support getting data together to help them make management decisions on their business.
So when you're talking about management information, what sort of things would you be saying to business owners and business leaders that they should be looking at on a monthly basis in terms of in their board meetings, or could you give me an idea of what sort of things?
Well, it depends on the client. So what I would do is go through their management information, in inverted commas, that they currently have, and my team and me would help talk through what they actually want, because they might be getting a monthly pack produced, a generic pack that they've always had done, right, which isn't really helpful for them, because they want their customers split between trade and customers, for whatever reason it might be, and that's different between businesses. So it's almost like, well, what do you want to see at the end of the month? And sometimes people will say, I don't know, right, because I've always had this.
Yep.
So I think we just go through that process and break everything down. Do you want extra nominal codes? Mm-hmm. Therefore, does something have to be tagged in the system? to help it come out at the end of the month to be shown in a certain way that's useful to you. It's got to be useful to you. Otherwise, you just put them in the drawer like the year-end accounts and say, what's my tax bill again?
Which I suppose leads on neatly to something which you've spoken to me before, which is this idea of continuous accounting or real-time bookkeeping. We spoke on the last episode with Heather about bookkeeping, and I was nervous that we were going to lose, go down from 3 listeners to 2, and that's probably going to happen again this time round. And we've probably gone down from 3 to 2, and I told everyone you're a Liverpool supporter as well. So our 2 listeners might go down to 1 now. Thanks for sticking with us, Mum.
Stop it.
So in terms of real-time bookkeeping then, I'm interested to understand what you mean by that, or continuous accounting, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I would say continuous accounting more than real-time bookkeeping. Real-time bookkeeping is sort of an idea that everything is, you've got all the figures on any time during the day, at any point during the day. And to bore everybody, like you said, there may be certain adjustments that need to be made, prepayments, accruals, or whatever it is, that are normally made at the end of the month. They can be made mid-month, but I think it's more important and more valuable for continuous accounting, the concept for the accuracy of the information, the quality of the information to improve every month, so that by the time you get to the year end is just another month, it's just another procedure. And so the only reason you'd have the year end in your head is because of the tax and maybe what you're showing to the general public. But apart from that, they don't mean a thing. It's your monthly management accounts. Management accounts being the appropriate word. They help you to make management decisions. That's what you need them for. But we just want to make them as good as they can possibly be. And continuous accounting, we'll do that on a monthly basis.
So continuous accounting to you is more a mindset in a business to get away from thinking of your numbers as something that you produce at the end of the year, or when you're asked for them, if you like, by your accountant.
Yeah.
And something that you do all the time, using your data to support decisions. Is that right?
Yeah, because some businesses, for example, will do a stock take once a year, and it might be quite impractical to do a stock take depending on what you're selling. But if you do it once a year and not every month, your stock value is going to change every month, and it will change your cost of sales, your gross profit, and therefore potentially your decision that you make each month. So you have to find a way to do that, whether that becomes an estimate if it's impractical to do. But the data needs to be good every month. It needs to be accurate and needs to be valuable.
And do you think now that with the tech that's available to businesses now, that idea of having good data, good information is a lot more achievable for companies? And are you seeing so it probably is more achievable. Are you seeing businesses embrace that, or do you still think that some businesses are sort of stuck in the past?
Some businesses are stuck in the past, but I think that if you sit down with them and break things down, that you don't know what you don't know. So you don't know there's an app out there to do something that you've been doing for ages manually or on paper or whatever. Some people will realise it and have a look out there, but some people don't. We've got a security business, and we introduced an app to them where they can, their employees, their security guards, go around sites on using an app. So they know when they've clocked in because of GPS. Right. All their hours are all logged, and if you set it up correctly, with most of these things, you get all the information goes straight into the accounting package.
Right. So I'd like to move on, I suppose, to your specialist area, which as I mentioned at the start is e-commerce. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested to know how you got into e-commerce. And what you think is different about e-commerce businesses to, say, your more traditional bricks and mortar businesses. But let's start by understanding how you got into it in the first place.
I just got into it by meeting a couple of guys in Northern Ireland that helped people set up Amazon businesses and help them choose what to sell, knowing almost the trends on Amazon. They had their own software, etc. But a lot of these people were from around the world, so they'd go over to the US, and I ended up being at the end of their course the person to go to set up a UK company for these individuals, and a bank account, get them selling on Amazon, etc., and do the VAT, etc. And then I just learned, because I was in that space then, from them and from others along the way that you meet, all different things, different aspects of e-commerce. But yeah, that's how I got into it, and I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing it because a lot of things were workarounds, because people like HMRC didn't have any rules about certain aspects of things, or they seem to be grey areas, and that's where accountants and advisors come in, where we can interpret them in the best way possible for the client, because people in that space had interpreted things in the wrong way, just for their own, because it suited them. They just thought, well, that's the answer I want. Whereas a professional will come along and say, well, this is how I interpret it from what would HMRC think, etc. So I like that, and I did like the community feel of e-commerce as well, because these people were in Facebook groups, different types of groups for different types of sellers. And I just got to understand more about them, that they all seemed to want to help each other. The only thing they wouldn't tell each other was where they bought their stuff from, and maybe what they sold. Right. But everything else, they would share it all. So I like that. And
that's quite unique in business, I think, isn't
it? I like that. But the consequence of that, I suppose one of the bad things that happens there is that you have somebody that's in one situation that says, this is what I do, I'm helping you as a fellow seller, you're in competition, but we're all sellers, this is my situation and this is what I advise you to do.
Right.
But that seller might be in a completely different position, because, or a different situation, because it's the internet. Somebody here is in Miami, somebody here is in Berlin, and somebody here is in London, and so they've got different situations, and it's not always that advice might not always be applicable to the other person.
So the community aspect is great in one sense, in that you can share and learn from other people, but your professional advice or opinion would be seek some professional advice.
Yeah, because it's cross-border. I don't know. I can give a US person that owns a UK company advice, but I can't advise them on their tax status in the US. Right. I always tell them that they've got to get a US advisor, and then because of that, I meet a US advisor, so I can help other people who haven't got one, and we can find them for them. We've got lawyers over there that can help with trademarks, that sort of stuff. We've got people in Canada, Australia, all advisors, and specific to e-commerce as well, which is really important.
So as well as the community aspect that you talked about of e-commerce, is there anything else, which is great, by the way, and I think I've noticed and I've seen, you're active on a lot of these Facebook groups, and you sort of build a reputation on those groups, and it's great the way that people share. Other than that, is there anything else you'd say you've noticed in the e-commerce industry that is different to the way that businesses operate, or is it just, obviously they've got specific issues to them in terms of cross-border trade and that sort of thing?
I did say recently in a quote to you that in 5 years' time, e-commerce will just be commerce. Right. Because so it's not really any different. There's certain things that are different, and it's mainly VAT aspects, because it's cross-border. But there are some specific things that HMRC have released guidance on because of all the issues that they had with foreign sellers. But yeah, the businesses are businesses. They're limited companies. They're the same. It's just their behaviour is a bit different. That's all. So apart from the VAT and just the way that they work. So they will use Messenger, they will use WhatsApp more, all that's and Slack, that sort of thing. It's just the behaviour of them.
And so, if someone was running an e-commerce business listening to this, what would your advice be if they don't have an accountant, or if they're not working with a professional at the moment? Would your I mean, obviously you've got a commercial interest to say yes, come and speak to me.
I have got a commercial interest, and I would say come and see me, but I wouldn't sell them anything they didn't want that they didn't need.
Right.
I would say be careful in listening to people in groups, and I would say it could just cost you a lot of money. We've had people that have, it's cost them tens of thousands of pounds in VAT because somebody has told them. Sometimes it could have been an accountant. Has told them that they shouldn't be registered in a certain jurisdiction when they should have been. So it can be really costly, and you can end up then chasing your tail, especially if you're if your margins aren't particularly good, high. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to move on to another topic, which is we hope that the people that listen to this will be business owners and business leaders, and I'm intrigued because. As I spoke with Heather, interestingly, on the last episode, you have come from being a practicing accountant and still are a practicing accountant, but you've got an additional aspect in that you're also the director of your own business, and you're now running your own business. I'm interested to know what you think the differences are, and what you found in the 18 months, 2 years that you've been running your business, what the challenges are, and if you could share that with us.
I was a partner in another firm, and partners are business owners, but I wasn't really a business owner because if you're in a practice with, 20 partners, then you don't really take much in. Somebody else is running the business, right. compared to this business, and setting a business up with all the regulatory controls. All the regulations, I've learnt a lot, and I've really liked it, and doing that, I suppose, in reflection, doing that, you see more about, or you understand more, about what business owners have to put up with, have to go through, etc. And so that has helped, and so that's why I want to look into the monthly figures, because I now look at the monthly figures, and I look at the bank, and I look at all these different things. What information do I need? Mm-hmm. I've just had a conversation with Heather on our current figures. What do we want to see? How do we want it split down? What's useful information? And so that's a reflection, and I say, well, surely that's what all business owners want and need. And sometimes they think they're getting it. They do think they're getting it because they get these figures and it tells them what the profit is, but it doesn't really break it down and tell the story. It doesn't tell the story.
And that's interesting, because we've also talked about how sometimes we assume in professional services, you just talked about profit, which is something that I'm sure everyone will know what that is. But we've talked before about business owners we assume as accountants that everybody knows what we're talking about. And that's an interesting one. So do you find when you're working with business owners that there's an element of education as well as giving advice? Education is really important, and I think we are going to do some education. Right.
What I would like to do is have some management accounts and have a little "what is this" next to almost everything, and I'll pop up on a video and say, this is how what is profit you've just mentioned. How does that how is it relatable to cost of sales, to net profit, gross profit, net profit? What happens if my stock goes up, if my stock goes down, etc.? How does that affect profit? A lot of business owners don't really understand that when they're making business decisions. So I want them to know that. Right. Why they should know that to help them make better decisions. So that's what I want to do.
And that sort of leads us nicely on to the sort of final part, which is where every week we try and ask the people on the podcast what their uncommon sense is that they would share with other business owners and directors. Mm-hmm. So it's really the idea there is, from your own experience, what's something which you would be happy to share that people could learn from, or learn from your experience in your career. Is there anything that you've got that you would be happy to share with business owners or directors?
I would say ask stupid questions. That's what I would say, because if you've got a question in your head that you think, I can't ask this because I think it's a stupid question, whether it is or isn't, and it probably isn't, you still want to know the answer to it, don't you? You don't know the answer, that's why you're asking the question. So I just think people need to understand about the other person. So I'm a qualified accountant. You might be cutting granite worktops or whatever. You're not going to know that. I'm not going to know the intricacies about what you do. So just ask, because you need to know these things. If you wanted to know it, you need to know it.
That's really interesting. So do you think in business there is a general sort of perception that it's weakness to ask a question?
I think it's that in life
Just
in general. It's more kids that will do it, because before they get to the social norm of in adulthood, oh, I can't ask that because of social constructs. I think it's just in life.
So your advice to business owners would be, if you don't understand something,
just ask.
Don't be afraid to
just
ask.
Look, mate, you can ask me anything. I told you that.
Well, I suppose which leads us on nicely to the end. So hopefully I've not asked you too many stupid questions today.
Plenty, but just keep asking them.
Okay. But it's been really interesting to have you on. It's been great to find out about your work with e-commerce and at the Uncommon Practice. And thanks very much for joining us on Common Sense.
Thanks for having me.